seats, and I'm sorry about that. I suspect there are more seats on the way, so that's the good news. I suspect there's more people here than actually signed up for the meeting, but anyway, we're very glad to see you anyway. My name's Mike Aronson. I'm the chair of the Normandy Action group, and I'm accompanied this evening by pretty well everyone. You see the names you see at the bottom of our regular newsletters, the members of our steering committee, plus some other very loyal and regular volunteer helpers. So I'm not going to introduce everybody by name now, but when we come to the particular moment, the questions, we'll let people introduce themselves then. So the way we want to run this evening, the purpose of this evening, I'm assuming that pretty well everybody in this room, if not everybody, thinks that this proposed development by Technical is a bad idea. Should we just have a clearing of the lungs? Just say yes. Yes. Excellent. Well, I think we'll take that as a result. That's good. So we're not going to try and sort of convince you of that. But what we are going to try and do is to give you the arguments that you need should you choose to put in an objection to the proposal on the Guildford Borough Council website, which you can do. Now, many of you know that at the moment that website is being spammed by a whole load of statements supposedly in support of the development, which is being gathered by a company called Your Shout, which is employed by Taylor Wimpey to go out and get people to put in things saying we think this is a really good idea. If you look at any of them on the website, they're all very, very superficial. They don't really make any particular points. They certainly don't link back to planning regulations, so they're unlikely to carry any weight. Nevertheless, it's really irritating, not least because it means that there's a delay in uploading the comments of others who've got sort of more sensible things to say. And I would just like to pay a quick tribute to Councillor Keith Witham, who's sitting here in the front row, because Keith has been really dogged in pursuing this issue with Guildford Borough Council, and is very proud to have got some replies in record quick time from them. But there doesn't seem to be an awful lot they can do about it, so those things will keep appearing. However, the Guildford Dragon is researching this story, and if there's anyone here, or if you know of anyone here, who's been approached by someone with a clipboard and asked what they think about the development, and has started to say that they think it's a bad thing, and the person has then walked away, and if you're willing to relay that to the reporter from the Guildford Dragon, that would be really helpful, because they just need a little bit of ammunition for their piece to be able to say that, you know, this is not a proper bit of market research, this is a lobbying exercise, and anyone who doesn't give the right answer just gets ignored. And I know for a fact there are at least 2 people who have actually spoken to the canvasser, and their objections have been written down, but those objections have not appeared on the Guildford Borough Council website. So it makes a mockery of the whole process, really, and it's a sort of stupid game for Taylor Wimpey to be playing, but they are playing it. So, as I say, if anybody here has been approached, has given their objection to the proposal, has seen it written down, and it hasn't appeared, if you could come and have a chat with one of us afterwards, that would be really helpful. So we don't want to spend the whole evening talking about that. That's just a sort of irritation. What we really want to do, as I say, is to sort of try to give you as many good arguments as we can if you feel like opposing this proposal. Now, everyone should have a handout, or maybe shared handout, which basically lists the 10 points that we put on our A2 boards that have been going up today, and there will be some A4 flyers that we hope to have tomorrow, and they are also listed in an article on our website. So this is our best attempt to identify the 10 most obvious areas where one can object to the main proposal. There is, of course, a subsidiary proposal which has got a number 1 higher, so it's 01726 rather than 01725 for the main one, and that is for the so-called SAN, the suitable alternative natural green space, which they have to provide if they're doing a development that close to the special protection area of the ash ranges. So there are actually two applications, and it's quite important that we object to both. And all the ones that have been collected by your shout have automatically been allocated to both. So you'll see far more statements of support for the SAG than there are objections at the moment. So, as I say, we're just basically going to run through some slides very quickly, which sort of just highlight these 10 things which you've got on your handout as well. We're then going to give you some practical advice about how to frame an objection, and we'll then open it up to a Q&A. My colleague Nick Goff over there has got a mic, which he can get around so that if you want to ask a question of the panel, you'll be able to do so. And then once we've done that, we thought we would just break up into individual groups around the edge of the room, where if people want to sort of talk in more detail about flooding, or if they want to talk about transport, or if they want to talk about habitat and biodiversity, or if they just want a little bit more detail on how do I actually object to this thing. I don't have an account with Guildford Borough Council, how do I get one, etc., etc. We can help with that. And we've also got some hard copy forms for anyone who doesn't want to do it online, just wants to write it down on a piece of paper. And unlike your shout, whatever you say, we will undertake to deliver it for you. So that's how the evening's going to work. I think maybe we can move to the first slide, Martin. So I don't know, can you actually see that at the back of the room? Can you more or less read it? Thank you. So all this is, again, this is all in an article on our website, just repeating what it says there. The strongest points we can make are based on our own experience of the village and of the reality of living here. So, for example, things like traffic, things like flooding, we all live with them, we know they're real, and if we can illustrate our objections, possibly even with photographs, which could be either copied into a Word document or attached to an email. And I think Caroline might say a little bit more about that later, about the particular areas that we're really looking for coverage of. That would be good. It's really important that we do object. It's really important that people try and do it in their own words and just copy and paste what we've put on our website. And the deadline, the official deadline, is actually showing on the website as the 28th of February. So that's 10 days away. What we do know, though, is this application will not be determined for several months. And they will accept objections up until the time that the officer has finalised their report. So even if you don't make the deadline of 28th February, don't despair. If you put it in the following week, it's definitely going to be accepted, it's going to count. We don't know how long that will be the case, but it shouldn't be too long. But the more we can get in by the actual deadline of the 28th of February, I put 27th, 28th, because it keeps moving, but at the moment it says 28th. Okay, let's get on to the next one. So we've got these 10 reasons to object, which are here. And the first one is that this is not a grey belt site. Now, this is all a bit complicated and technical, and I'm not going to bore you with it. The fact is, grey belt was introduced by the government as a way of bringing more green belt land into consideration for planning approval. It is not of itself a guarantee that that approval will be given, and it is purely administrative concept. Basically, what it really comes down to is if land doesn't prevent neighbouring towns from merging, or if it doesn't stop urban sprawl, then it can be considered as grey belt. Well, our argument on this is it does actually prevent neighbouring conurbation of Aldershot, Ash, Tongham from merging with Guildford. And bear in mind, in the Guildford local plan, there's already a proposal for a big development of Blackwell Farm to the west of Guildford, So this is actually a really important buffer. Normandy is a really important buffer against the eventual joining up of the whole of that area north of the Hog's Back. So that's our first argument, that it shouldn't be considered as grey belt because it passes the test of stopping neighbouring towns from joining up. There are other more technical reasons why it shouldn't be considered as grey belt. There's a thing called footnote 7, which if the flood risk is material and causes the developer to change the nature of their proposal, then that footnote 7 kicks in, and again that's another reason for saying it's not grey belt. It's obvious that the developer has had to restrict their proposal. They can't build on the highest flood risk land, which is why we argue they've been driven to put 4-storey buildings up on the site. Most of them will be to the north of the railway station, but some of them will actually be in the middle section as well. So, you know, a big argument that because the developer can't build on the flood risk area, they're going to have to put up very high buildings, which again is at odds with Guildford Borough Council policy. So I think we could move to the next one, Martin. Okay, so we think we might win the technical argument on grey belt, but even beyond that, even if it's adjudged to be grey belt, the developer has to be able to demonstrate that it doesn't cause serious damage to the green belt more widely in the area. And again, we think there's a very good case to be made for why that is the case. I mean, you know, this is a very rural area, it has a particular character, and putting 950 homes would certainly have a major impact on how the green belt in this area looks. There's a thing called very special circumstances that can be invoked. We don't think that they apply here. And, you know, just as an aside, if you can imagine the light from 950 new builds in occupying the space between Westwood Lane and Glazers Lane, you know, it's just going to look like a small town. It's going to look completely different. Okay. So the third one I've sort of touched on already. It's completely out of character. This is a rural area. Even the developer sort of admits that actually this is going to have an urban characteristics, this development. I've already talked about the inappropriate scale, the 4-storey, 14-metre high apartment blocks. One of the flyers of that, the one that's on the table there, we produced a graphic showing that there was nothing of comparable height between Aldershot and Guildford. And if you put 4 stories, if you plonk them down in Normandy, you're going to create a completely new and a different kind of environment, which we think is inappropriate, shouldn't be allowed. It's also potentially quite an important heritage site. I mean, we know about the visible manifestations of that. You've got Westwood Place on the far side of the avenue, you've got the avenue itself, you've got glaziers on this side, which are, you know, these are sort of Tudor, I guess, buildings which are protected. They're Grade 2 listed buildings. But there may also be invisible heritage assets. I got a bit of a laugh here at the village meeting when I suggested that there might be a Roman road buried underneath the site, but it is actually a realistic possibility. And one of the things that the developer was asked to do, which they haven't done, in our judgment, was in their application to take that possibility seriously and to show how they were going to address it. We don't think they've done that, and so that's another weakness in their case. And then possibly the strongest aspect of our case, I think, is the fact that this is not a sustainable location. Now, what does sustainable mean? It means that you've got infrastructure that works and can deliver, can support whatever the population is. Much is made of Wanborough Station, and the fact that, you know, Wanborough Station is, the government has announced that it wants to build high-density housing close to rail stations, but actually Wanborough Station is one of the least used stations in Great Britain, actually, and even if this development went ahead, it's actually very unlikely, in fact I think Network Rail may have said this, that they're not actually going to sort of put huge investment into it because it will still remain one of the least used stations. And on top of that, we all know that actually if you catch the train from Wanborough, it doesn't take you to Tesco's. It doesn't take you to your supermarket. It doesn't take you to your children's school, either, probably, unless you're very lucky. So, you know, the number of car journeys is going to shoot up as a result of this. There's a bus service, but the bus service is at the north of the site, the train is at the south, so, you know, it's a long walk from one end to the other. And much is made again in the application of the fact they're going to provide a school, plus a special education needs school, a primary school and a SEND school. There's absolutely no detail of how they're going to do that, and there's no indication of where the funding should come from. In fact, I think one of the characteristics of the application as a whole is that it just is full of airy, vague promises, absolutely no indication that the money will be available. And again, that's a very strong reason to argue against it. Well, we talked about the road network already, but it's worth highlighting. Over 2,000 extra car journeys. Westwood Lane is a C road. Glaziers Lane is a D road. You know, these two roads are going to take the bulk of a lot of the extra traffic. Over 2,000 extra car journeys daily. They haven't done a proper road safety assessment, and some of the proposals for how you would access and exit the site we think are very dangerous. If you look at the traffic analysis, there's an amazing figure in there, which is that an estimated queue of 74 cars going up Wanborough Hill in the morning peak. I mean, it's just ridiculous. It's just not serious. The cars would stretch all the way back to the unloved bend where things happen in the field off to the right. Most people can amuse themselves sort of looking at that field, but you know, it's crackers, absolutely crackers. You sort of feel that the consultants who wrote the report must have known it was crackers. And in the absence of any plan to deal with that, to mitigate the risk, you know, it's just not viable. It's not sensible. And we all know, and I know there are some people in the room who have this problem, you know, of actually having sewage coming up into their bathroom. And there are probably several people in this room who've had that problem in the past. The sewerage network is at capacity, more or less. Thames Water, who maintain it, have said on previous applications, for example, the Elm Centre one just down the road, which is for only 28 houses, and this is for 950. They said, you know, it's not possible for these, any new